Hi everyone, we're live with our newest episode of The Conversation. I am your host, Elisha Krause, and our very own Michael Knowles will be taking live questions for an entire hour. That's right, this isn't Friday Live. It is your episode of The Conversation. Everyone is free to watch, so you can watch The Conversation. It's streaming for everyone, but you can only be a part of it if you're a subscriber to the Daily Wire. How do you do this? It's easy. Go click on the link in our video description to ask questions or sign up, and be sure to tune in for next month's episode on Thursday, September 20th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, featuring Ben Shapiro. You know, that episode is going to be marking the year since we started these things.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Oh, wow. That's wild.
It's been...
Well, you've got to tune in.
A year next month.
My gosh.
It'll be lots of fun.
I'm getting older, wiser. Probably not wiser. Older, though, certainly.
Definitely not wiser.
Yeah, that's all right.
Has marriage made you a wiser?
Marriage has definitely made me wiser. It's made me more dependent, that's for sure. Like, you know, in the old days, I was in the gutter, you know, eating whatever sort of slop kind strangers would pass to me. Mm-hmm. Now, I get taken care of. There's a woman who loves me. This is a much better world.
It's a nice thing.
It's a nice thing, yeah.
Have you noticed how many issues you have?
My issues have issues. I've got, yeah.
Well, because it's funny because my husband and I, when we talk to newlyweds, sometimes they are like, yeah, I thought I was totally fine. I thought I was really cool and independent and like no issues at all. And then I got married and I realized I have tons of issues.
Well, it's interesting too because I'm married to Saint Little Elisa.
Yes.
She went from Sweet Little Elisa when we were single to Saint Little Elisa.
Yes.
So in the light of that, my issues become more pronounced, you know?
And we should probably once and for all make it very clear that we are not married. Because some people have been
Oh, that's right.
About
I was getting tweets and they said, you know, Michael, I can see a lot of chemistry between you and Sweet Little Elisha.
No.
I don't know. Do you feel the chemistry? Cut it with a butter knife.
No. First question.
All right.
Joel says, Blessed Assumption Knowles, what Lenten periods do you share with the Oriental Orthodox Church other than Advent and Great Lent? And does Sweet Little Lisa wear a headscarf to Mass? Oh,
that's a very good question. I'm sorry to tell you, I know very little about the Oriental Orthodox Church. What I can tell you, though, is, and for the headscarf, this might be confusing for some of the Protestant viewers. There is such a thing as a mantilla. This is what Catholic women wear in more traditional liturgies, the Tridentine Mass. And I will say one issue. The first time I took Sweet Little Elisa to a Latin Mass, you know, they have like a grab bag of mantillas if you want to have them and put them on. But, you know, I would wear it myself. If you're a lady, you take care of yourself, you don't want to grab and put something on your head or anything. So that Sweet Little Lisa didn't go for that. I think that was a stumbling block on the way to correct liturgy. One has to have their own mantilla. But I wish I knew the answer to the Oriental Church. I will say on this, though, there are other rites around Los Angeles and all around the world of Catholic liturgies and Catholic masses. So people get this confused. They refer always to the Roman Catholic Church as though the church is just Roman. But the Catholic Church has lots of rites. It has a Byzantine rite. It has all sorts of rites. Even in LA, there are multiple rites. So the Roman rite is only one of them. And one thing I will say, too, not to be too confusing on this, but with the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is separate from the Catholic Church, even though there is an Eastern Rite within the Catholic Church, are you with me?
I'm totally lost. I'm like, thank God I just love Jesus and I'm non-denominational, but continue.
Well, but the one aspect on this, and this has even infected the Roman Rite and the Catholic Church, is while the Eastern liturgy is all sung, it's very beautiful, the whole liturgy is supposed to be sung. Even in the Catholic Church, even in the Roman Rite, we get a lot of those acoustic guitars and the priest facing you and kind of just talking, and it's not as good. We have something to learn from the East, and I hope that we continue to bring that back into the Catholic tradition.
Okay, interesting. Evan says, Michael, why haven't you appeared on LWC, Rubin Report, or Joe Rogan? Ben and Andrew are regulars on the show, as well as other places. Do all my favorite podcast hosts have something against the papists?
That's a great question. Listen, Joe and Crowder, if you're watching this, yeah, that is a really good question. I think they should have me on. I don't know. It might be some sort of anti-papist, anti-popery bias. They do say Arthur Schlesinger.
Maybe they want you to write a real book.
Well, I'm not doing that. I already sold all the books. I don't need to. I've got the biggest book in the world. Arthur Schlesinger, the historian, said that anti-Catholicism is the deepest, most enduring bias in American history. Now, I'm not saying anything about Rogan or about Crowder I like both of their shows.
Or Ruben.
Or Ruben, that's right. Ruben was in there, but they might have to prove it, all right? Anti-Catholic until proven otherwise, fellas.
Steven says, even though the Western society is Judeo-Christian based, are there any lessons we can take from Taoism or Buddhism?
Like, yeah, I guess, whatever. Sure, you know, one example is Michael Oakeshott, who's a great conservative political philosopher. He'll quote from Taoism every so often. Plenty of good writers quote from Taoism or little anecdotes from Buddhism. But there is this real issue among secular Westerners where they've never really been exposed to their own religious tradition. If they have, they misunderstand it. They haven't been exposed to the real thing. So they look outward to foreign cultures because they think that there's something nice about this. There's a kind of pervasive anti-Western sentiment. So people look out, they say, oh, Buddhism, that's really cool. Oh, yeah, maybe I do this. The probably not politically correct word in New York is Jubu. Is people who are born Jewish, they're secular Jews, and they become Buddhists.
Is that pretty common?
Jubu, oh, very common. It's all, you know, people
it's
go now.
Common enough that it has a nickname, apparently.
You see women. I saw a friend of mine on Instagram. She posted a picture of her yoga studio. She said, yoga is my church. And this is, I think, what it comes from, is people look out at that Eastern mysticism while they laugh at not only Western mysticism, but at the foundation of our society, Judeo-Christian morality and the Christian religion. So I think, like, sure, people can quote Taoism, that's great, but there's much to be learned from your religious tradition. And unlike sort of, I don't want to be sectarian or geographically discriminatory here, the reason one is a Christian is because one thinks Christianity is true. It's correct. It's universal. The Catholic Church means the universal church. Christianity is a religion where there is neither Jew nor Greek, nor male nor female, nor slave nor free, but all are one in Christ. That's different. That's a call to universalism. And unlike other religions, which are based in philosophy or in poetry, Christianity is the only religion that I can see that's based in a fact. It's based in the incarnation of Christ. It's based on his life, his ministry, and his death, his conquest of death on the cross and his resurrection. That's pretty different, so I'd recommend looking into that before you look into the Tao Te Ching or something.
Okay. Richard says, Mike, why are you the butt of every joke at the Daily Wire? Has he obviously not met you? He said, is it jealousy because of your best-selling book?
They hate us because they ain't us. That's what it's really about. They hate us because they ain't us. I think it is.
I love you that you're like a New York boy saying ain't.
I know. I know. That's I'm Michael from the block. I'm as much of an urban New Yorker as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You know, we grew up in adjacent towns. No, I think it is this. And I got to tell you, I've got to look at it from their perspective. I'll look at it from charity, you know, which is these guys, you know, they've written a lot of books. How many books has Ben written?
Oh,
like
God,
a dozen or something?
Over a dozen.
Drew has written, I think,
he's been writing
1,000.
a syndicated column since he was like 16.
Yeah, he's been writing his column forever. And I sold way more books than like all of those books combined. So I understand, you know, it's... And frankly, the more they go on, they make fun of me, you know, they use all of these words. You know, I wrote a blank book, and I would say brevity is the soul of wit.
So Rachel wants to know how you pronounce this word.
Oh, here we go.
I don't want to say it because I don't want to ruin it. All right.
So the question is, how do you pronounce graphic? I think what Rachel is alluding to is the word GIF, graphics interchange format, GIF. Now, so there's a big debate. Is it GIF or is it GIF? There was a debate in our office.
I'm the GIF person.
Thank you.
Because the creator said it. Do you want to change the name of Sunday, Rachel?
Yeah, do you want to, that's exactly right.
That's the argument I use with our Biola and our seminary guy.
Do you want to change the name of Sunday?
What does the creator call it?
That's right.
That's what
so
you go
true.
with.
And it, you know, by the way, I get it. There are some words, first of all, this whole thing, how do you pronounce graphic? You don't pronounce it giraffic. That's ridiculous. When you use acronyms as a word, you pronounce the letters as they fit in that word, not as they fit in the original words. But sure, there's a girl, gift, giving, okay, those are hard G's. There is gibberish, gypsy, you know, plenty of words that have a soft G. So when the guy says it's pronounced GIF, we have to
created it.
We have to go with that. This is a debate essentially over prescriptivism and descriptivism in language. Some people say there are rules to language. You can speak properly or improperly. Some people say, nah, man. Hey, it's just whatever. You know, it's just words, man. And like, so, okay, obviously language evolves over time, but the descriptivist types, these hippy-dippy lefties, they want to accelerate that because they use language to pervert the culture. So it is incumbent, I know this seems like a minor point, it is incumbent on all freedom, God-fearing, America-loving conservatives to pronounce it Jif, like the peanut butter.
Please do. That was a much more eloquent argument than mine. I'm just like, the dude that made it, that made the best thing on the internet, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. You don't want to change the name of Sunday.
The ability to make amazing GIFs.
Right.
Like, just do what he says.
Do what he says.
You know, accept it. Rob has accepted it. Rob used to be in the GIF camp.
Oh, yeah. No, you've got to come over. I mean, I get it. Some people, they like really hate their dads or something. They're like, yeah, Dad, I'll show you. I'm going to, yeah, okay, it's all right. I know you might have a problem with authority. You might not like rules and discipline. Decadent cultures demand a little bit of discipline.
Okay. Joel wants to know, what are your thoughts on female altar assistants? It's not allowed in the Oriental Orthodox Church, but from the Catholic churches I have visited, it's quite frequent.
Yes. Of all of the questions one could get on altar assistants, I'm glad that that was the one that we got these days. I don't love it. I don't really like it. Although, frankly, I sort of like grown men to be altar servers. I know there's, you know, you kind of have this image of the little altar boys, and that's fine. But I like actually the dignity and the solemnity of having grown-ups do it too. I don't love it. I know this is unpolitically correct, and it doesn't make me a feminist or something, but I think there are roles for men and women in the church, and certainly you couldn't call the Catholic Church a misogynistic or sexist institution. Some of the greatest people in the history of the church have been women, St. Catherine of Siena or Joan of Arc or whoever. But there are different roles, and I think there's this modernist tendency to say, well, why can't women do this? Why can't women do this? Why can't... There are different roles, that's why. Because there are different roles in the church, and that seems perfectly fine. If you go to church and your experience at church is all about me, 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 what can I do? What can I want to do this, I want to do that. You're probably missing the point. You're probably missing the point. And as on many things, I admire what you all do out there in the Eastern Church.
All right. Luke says, hey, Michael, what's your favorite thing about working at the Daily Wire?
Well, obviously, look at that smiling face, huh? When you see that kind of smiling face. Working at the Daily Wire is a real blast. I have to drop my cynicism for a second here. It's a real blast because we were all kind of pals beforehand. We all knew each other socially before this thing even started. This has only been around, as far as I can tell, for
mainly the backstage crew.
The backstage crew,
like you, Jeremy, Drew, and Ben.
Yeah, we knew each other socially.
But there's a lot of people here that make it happen.
Well, you make a great point. This thing has exploded. This was like 5 people when it started. It is way bigger now. All the writers, people around the country. So that is true. And everyone here, I hate to be this earnest and nice, but everyone here is just terrific. Everyone here really is wonderful. This just does not happen in work environments, but they're all great people. And the thing my favorite thing about working at the Daily Wire is it's a tale as old as time. Guy comes, I moved out to LA, I was doing little plays in New York, independent films and stuff. And you know, this is the classic actor story. You move out to Hollywood to become an actor and you wind up in conservative Republican politics to the right of Attila the Hun. A tale as old as time. And I love that irony and that coincidence or providence. It's very fun.
Jonathan says, do you think there's anything we can do to both protect our national sovereignty and help people fleeing bad situations in their home countries, either through U.S. policy or as individuals?
Of course there is. And we do it on a huge scale. We accept people into this country at an absurdly high rate. And I think that's a wonderful thing. There is a question raised, which is why we don't accept all of those persecuted Christians in the Middle East. A lot of persecuted Christians in the Middle East, we never talk about it. They just dedicated a shrine to it at the Church of St. Michael in New York, to the persecution of Christians. We see the stories, and yet all of the refugees during that big crisis of refugees, 2015 through the present day, I suppose, it was all about Muslim refugees. We don't talk about Christian refugees, even though it was Christians fleeing Muslim persecution. That's a question, and I think it highlights an issue broadly, which is the United States is the greatest place on earth. It's the greatest place to live. I include all of the Western nations in that. I love going to Italy. I go to Italy for more than 5 days. I get the hives, you know. And I really like Italy. I love the language and the culture and the literature. And I just think, like, why can't you people make things work? Why don't you understand capitalism? I went to a sandwich store, the most famous one in Siena. I waited for an hour and a half outside. They wouldn't give me my sandwich. They were closed. The guy shows up. I say to him, can I get my sandwich now? He says, there's no bread. A sandwich store is panetteria. bread is the first thing in the word. He said, can I give you my money? He said, I don't know. So I went off on a tangent there.
Are you hungry right now?
I'm always hungry. What I mean to say is the United States is the greatest country in the world. Everybody would live here if they could, and we can't take the whole world. If we take the whole world, that doesn't make their lives better. It just makes America disappear. It makes it blend into nothing, right? To deconstruct into nothingness. So we have to be precise about who we take in, but we haven't been very precise in recent years, have we? I wonder why. The overlooking Middle Eastern Christians almost entirely raises some other questions about what maybe we should change in our immigration regime and in our refugee regime, because in these individual cases, you would take every single person, but broadly, let's not forget, if you can only take a finite amount of people, then mercy to one group could be cruelty to another group, and you've got to be really precise. This is not a clear-cut regime.
All right. Rachel says, how do we debate with leftists if they keep changing definitions of basic words?
Such a good point. Yeah. They keep changing the words. This is their primary motivation for how they fight cultural and political battles. So the great example, I mean, the one we all see is illegal alien. They took, that's a technical term, illegal alien.
Undocumented immigrant now.
Undocumented immigrant dreamer. Some of them are dreamers, aren't they? Dream. I dream too, but I'm not counted as a dreamer. They do it on that, but even a really specific and incredible one is marriage. Marriage, for all of human history, has had a definition. It's varied within those definitions, but it's always meant the union of husbands and wives. One husband and multiple wives, perhaps one husband and one wife, but husbands and wives. The left changed that definition without asking anybody. They said marriage is the union of two people who love each other. Just two, not three for some reason, just two. And they said, so therefore, if that's what marriage is, if it's just the union of two people who love each other, then why don't same-sex attracted people have the same rights as straight people? Why don't we have gay marriage? They say, well, the question isn't rights. Everyone should have the same rights. The question is, what is marriage? But they skip that by changing the definitions of words. The way that you fight this, you see it with the pronouns. The pronouns now, they're saying you have to call him a her and her a him and me a whatever. I don't know what people call me. The way you fight it is not giving them an inch. Do not give them 1 inch. And it's a little awkward. It's a little awkward when someone refers to Caitlyn Jenner, whom I like very much. I've never met Caitlyn Jenner. I like a lot of the things that he says. Apparently he's a Republican. I like that. But one must refer to Caitlyn as him, because he is a him. It might feel a little awkward. People might judge you, but you have to do it. When someone starts talking about undocumented, dreaming, future American, whatever, you have to say illegal alien. You have to stick to that language, or else we are going to get lost in fantasy. But can you still, to Rachel's original question though, can you still use language that they refuse to acknowledge in beating them in an argument? Of course, absolutely. You should use the correct language, because it's not like these two phrases are equally valid. Illegal alien and future undocumented dreaming, da-da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. Illegal alien describes the character of that person. It describes the nature of the person in this instance that we're talking about. He's in this country illegally. He's not a citizen. He's a foreign national. He's an illegal alien. Undocumented doesn't mean anything. I was undocumented when I worked at a sandwich shop at 14. I don't know, I'm undocumented now. I don't have my car insurance probably printed out. It's probably on my phone. I'm undocumented. A dreamer, we all dream. We dream when we go to sleep. Their language is weaker, and it's built into fantasy. And if we indulge that fantasy, then reality is going to punch you in the face, because you can't live in fantasy forever. But if you just butt it up with that real good, serious language, that strong, sturdy language, you will win, because it's more compelling, it's more evocative, and it's more correct. All right. Joel says, how should a visitor to a Catholic church such as myself properly attend but not take communion? I appreciate this question because I was recently at a meeting and I was seated with a whole bunch of priests, and I texted our fellow, your good Catholic friend and editor at Daily Wire, Emily Zanotti. Oh, yes. And I was like, yo, can I talk to a priest like I just talked to my pastor? Because I didn't know. Depends on the priest. I didn't know how to address it. You know what I mean? Like, can you just, when you meet a pastor in a non-denominational church, you're just like, I'm Alicia, what's your name? Yeah, they're all named like Josh. They're all like Keith or something. You're like, hey man, I'm Pastor Keith. What's up, bro? We got Daves and Tims and Julians and stuff in our church. But I'm just, so I appreciate this question. And my
Catholic grandmother who's watching is probably ashamed that I don't remember this.
Yes.
So what's the answer
Can
to that?
you, so yes, you should go to church and you should not receive communion. And this is not really an exclusionary sort of thing. We say, oh, the visitors don't get communion. You shouldn't receive communion if you're a Catholic and you're not in a state of grace. You haven't had a recent confession. How recent should your confession have been? I don't know. It's good to go more frequently. I haven't been in a little while. I don't feel great about that.
So you wouldn't take communion then?
Yeah. If you haven't been to confession in an extended period of time and you've committed mortal sins, even a Catholic should not receive communion that day. And part of that is that absence of taking Christ. This is my true flesh. This is my true blood. Taking that into you and having Christ live within you. It creates a longing and a desire to do good and to confess your sins and to sin no more. So you won't be awkward in any way. When I go to church, a lot of people don't take communion because
so it's not weird. It's not like he's going to be the only guy sitting in there and everyone else gets up and goes.
And you really you might be in some of the best company because one notices. I've tried to go to confession a number of times. I look on the website and they say they have confession at a certain time, and nobody's there. They just aren't doing it because people don't go to confession anymore. It's the forgotten sacrament. And when the communion lines are long and the confession lines are short, then people have lost the sense of sin. And you'll probably be sitting or kneeling in the company of people who still have that sense. So you shouldn't feel awkward or uncomfortable about that at all.
All right. Nicholas says, I know that you smoke cigars. Have you ever smoked a pipe? And if so, did you like it?
I've smoked many pipes. I was very fortunate as a young teenage boy I got as gifts, kind of hand-me-down gifts, a beautiful humidor, a Sinatra humidor for my cigars, and a number of vintage Dunhill pipes from the 1960s.
You got this as a teen?
Yeah, well, that's when you start smoking cigars, you know. So I don't know, I was probably 15 or something like that. And I do have a number of pipes. I have a meerschaum pipe, a Dunhill meerschaum, and a shellbriar, and a number of others. And you're supposed to smoke a different pipe every day.
Really?
So you don't burn it out, you know, so that they can cool down over the days. You don't crack your pipe. My issue with the pipe, the great thing about a pipe is for about $10 you can buy a lifetime supply of tobacco. You buy a couple ounces, it's like lasts you forever. The thing with a pipe though is it's so much work. You've got to like pack it in. There's a special way to pack it. I'm not very good at tamping or keeping it lit. And the quality of the tobacco is not as good. Cigar tobacco is much better. So I prefer the cigars. I've also heard, and I read this piece in First Things one time, and it really stuck with me, that the three kinds of tobacco you smoke correspond to the kind of person you are, to the part of your soul that comes out the most. So the cigarettes, that's the pathos. That's the appetite. You know, you're just kind of addicted, you're smoking. The cigar is the ethos. It's the chest, it's the spirit. It's mostly puffed out, you know, the smoke goes out. It's you know, big and billowy. And the pipe is the logos. It's the idea of the philosopher with the pipe. It has the feminine bowl, it has the masculine stem. You sit there and contemplate, and you puff, and you work a little at it. So for me, I'm more of the chest. I prefer the cigar much to it, but
only First Things would have
of course, it's the classic First Things article, right? Yeah, that's what I would do. Although eventually, when Shapiro inevitably fires me, I'm going to have to retire the nice cigars and go back to the pipe.
Okay, so this is the episode of The Conversation, not Friday Live. We're having lots of fun, and we're only taking subscriber questions, so you need to head over to dailywire.com right now and become a subscriber. If you're not, click on the link in our video description to ask questions or sign up, and be sure to tune in for next month's episode featuring our very own Ben Shapiro. It's going to be on Thursday, September 20th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. Only subscribers can ask the questions. Right?
That's important. You got to subscribe.
It's incredibly important. And only subscribers get the really cool Leftist Tears tumbler.
And this is essential these days. This is really essential because otherwise we'd drown.
Lane says, Michael, have you seen Daredevil season 1 on Netflix? It is well liked by critics and viewers alike and has a lot of Catholic imagery and themes. If you have seen it, what are your thoughts?
I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on Daredevil. I've heard it's very good. Yeah. The one thing I will observe with that, though, is there are Catholic imagery and themes pop up all the time. They pop up all the time in television. I liked that show, Young Pope. I actually enjoyed that. Did you see that?
I never watched it.
That was very
Jude
good.
Law, right?
Jude Law, yeah. It always comes up in the culture. You know, The Exorcist, obviously, and you're always seeing Catholic imagery. When you see it in movies, it's always a guy in a confessional or something, right, going up to the altar or the cross. And this is interesting in a Protestant country. right? The Americas were founded by a Catholic, discovered by a Catholic, Christopher Columbus. And I think Vespucci, Amerigo Vespucci, it's named after another one. But all the rest of the people are Protestants. The founders, the framers, the pilgrims, everybody, they're all Protestants. And yet this Catholic imagery is always coming up. And I think this is significant. I think it's spiritually and artistically significant because it tells us that there is something about the Catholic Church that when people think of Christianity, they think of that. Even people who don't like the Catholic Church, they're kind of anti-Catholic, they're confused about Mary and the saints and whatever. There's something, they just keep going back to that. And that tells you, I think, a lot about the spiritual history and the in real time physical history of the civilization. Interesting.
Raymond says, Mike, are they going to add Walsh to that shirt? Or is he the broom closet? Oh, I'm sorry. Or is he in the broom closet down the hall from yours? He's not in his broom closet. He's in his car.
He's in his car. We, I have to say, at least, I get to come out of my car during the day and get into the Shapiro broom closet. Although I don't know, this could be just like a big ruse because Matt gets to control his environment entirely, and. Whereas here, I don't know what kind of things they're sending into this room, kind of bugs and mice.
I'm here, so I think you're safe.
Yeah, that's true. For right now, at least, the air is a little cleaner, I certainly don't have any idea what shirt you're talking about, but I would say, with regard to Matt, we had this big blow up, this big spat a few weeks ago. Did you see this?
Oh, no.
Because it turns out that Matt Walsh is a globalist.
Oh, yes.
He's a globalist.
Yes. I was aware of this.
He started leading me down the globalist track. I was about to become one of those nefarious deep state globalists, but I stopped. I said it was enough, mostly because I had globes hitting me in the head. Listen, once Matt renounces his globalism, then maybe we can all talk and be friends again.
It was really fun throwing globes at Michael's head, by the way.
That's right, you were there for that.
And if you like my shirt, you can get them over on Amazon. Anyway, Ryan says, hi, Michael. I have a computer and 2 months of free time. I want to learn a new skill, but don't want to spend more than $1. What should I do?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, you know what might be helpful for you? Have you ever heard of Skillshare, baby? Oh, yes. Skillshare is so good. And Skillshare is very important, by the way. If they didn't sponsor the shows, I think I would still talk about Skillshare because Skillshare is so essential in our current culture, which is this is what happens when millennials, especially, I love to pick on millennials, have free time.
You know that you are a millennial.
Don't remind me. I know, that's
just
true.
Just FYI, he is a younger millennial than I am.
Listen, I'm in the generation, but not of the generation. But this is what happens, in our current culture, you go home at night, you work for 3 hours a day, and then you go home at night, and you just get out your phone and you go like this. And you just scroll, or maybe, I don't know, there are pot delivery services everywhere, so maybe you smoke a little pot and you're scrolling, right? Nobody betters themselves. And unfortunately for millennials, our education is pretty bad. There are a lot of smart millennials.
Well, I was homeschooled, I don't know.
You got a good education, but this isn't even the teacher's fault. It's really the fault of the curricula. But it's really bad. People just don't know as much as they used to know. And so there's a great service called Skillshare. Go check it out, and you can actually learn real skills that will better your life and give you a better understanding of the world. Couldn't recommend it more highly. That, or you could just smoke a cigar for a couple of hours.
I just want to know why he has 2 free months and he's not going out to get a job.
Well, you need skills to get a job.
There you go.
Maybe he graduated with a degree in lesbian dance therapy, and they're not hiring very well, so I appreciate the initiative. Good on you.
Okay. Arun says, hi, Michael. Can you explain papal infallibility? In light of the many comments by Pope Francis, which, if not contrary to Catholicism, seem to irk Catholic theological conservatives.
There are comments that are contrary to Catholicism. That's absolutely true.
Could you give an example of one that you think?
Pope Francis recently changed the Catechism to say that, and the Catechism is a popular book of teachings of the Catholic Church, and it now says that the death penalty, capital punishment, is an attack upon the inviolability of the dignity of the human person. I think I'm getting that almost exactly right. And this is contrary to the previous catechism, which said that while advances in incarceration might make it so that the death penalty is practically non-existent. There's nothing intrinsically evil about it. St. Augustine writes in defense of the death penalty. St. Paul writes in defense of the death penalty. Thomas Aquinas writes in defense of the death penalty. This has always been upheld. When the Pope was overseeing all the papal states, there were many people who got hanged. I forget which Pope it was, but it was the last Pope to execute somebody in the papal states. He was asked for a reprieve, and he said, "I will not do it, and I do not want to." Because hanging concentrates the mind. We talk about only the sort of rehabilitative effects of capital punishment. Well, if we can, or maybe the deterrent, if we can get the guy not to commit a crime, maybe we can lock him up forever, blah, blah, blah. No, there's a medicinal effect as well, which is that Dr. Johnson pointed out, when a man knows that he is to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully. It brings immediacy of serious questions to your mind. And also, there's nothing illegitimate about killing criminals. So, Pope Francis recently said that. I believe in another place, perhaps off the record, he said that the death penalty is anti-gospel. Certainly, that is not the case. Papal infallibility is widely misunderstood. It is hardly ever evoked. It's a handful of times you could point to and say the Pope was speaking infallibly. The Pope is not infallible when he's saying whatever he wants to say. He's certainly not infallible. The Pope, as infallibility is defined, is only infallible when he is clarifying aspects of doctrine. So I think people misunderstand this in the way papal infallibility is, in a sort of sense, a limit on papal power, in the same way that divine right monarchy is, in a certain sense, a limit on monarchical power, which is that you're answerable to a higher power. You're answerable to 2,000 years of doctrine. You're answerable to God. So I think we've had two of the greatest men certainly in the 20th century, if not in all of history, serve as popes back to back, John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI. If Pope Francis can't live up to that incredible height of erudition and spiritual greatness, and perhaps he can, who knows, then perhaps that can be forgiven him. But I think sometimes the good Lord sends us bad popes. I'm not saying Pope Francis is a bad pope, but sometimes the good Lord sends us bad popes to remind us that the popes are only infallible when they're not being fallible.
Alrighty. Johnny says, what are your thoughts on Joyce's Ulysses?
Well, I'm living in it every day because in Ulysses by James Joyce, you get a real sense of the Trump tweets. I think you get a real sense of this kind of stream of consciousness, going on and on. We're living in that world. By the way, I have to admit, I've never finished it.
Really?
I've never finished it.
I think my freshman year of college I
had to. You read Ulysses? Yeah.
Well, because, Peter Kreeft. His reading list is long.
That's
true. With my professor.
Oh, yeah.
For my 2 semesters in college.
You did pretty well, You got... I've never finished it. I think I'm finishing it now every single day because I'm on Twitter, yeah. But it does, I do like certain modern works. I don't want to just seem like I'm a curmudgeon, and I don't like anything that's modern. I like a lot of things that are modern. I like a lot of modern writers from the modern era all the way to the present. But it is important to have a coherence to reading and thought. Part of this, we were knocking education earlier, is students get this education now that is totally incoherent. There's no sense of laying out the groundwork of, perhaps before we read Joyce, we should read Aristotle. I don't know. Perhaps we should read foundational texts, and then we can understand where Joyce comes from. Then we can understand where modern writers come from, or Renaissance writers, or medieval, whatever. That's not really true. Now when students go to college campuses, they basically say, pick whatever classes you want in any order you want to take them, and some places don't have grades, that's fine. But there should be some coherence to that. So now I've gone back over the last few years to try to fill in the gaps of my own education, and so I'll by the time I get... Are you saying
that even after you went to the esteemed Yale, that there were gaps in your education?
Well, I'd like to blame Yale entirely for that, because Yale has, in the words of Don Kagan, former dean of Yale, it might no longer be possible to get an education at Yale. But I can't really, I went to a lot of parties too, man. I'm a little responsible in my own, yeah. But there should be a greater coherence, certainly. So hopefully, once I've plowed through all the other books I haven't read, then I can finally get back around to finishing Joyce.
Margot says, Hey, Pope Kofefe, why don't you have a laptop for your show?
An astute observation. I don't like having a laptop in front of me when I'm speaking to people or speaking into a camera. I don't like it because I feel like I'm plugged into the cyborgs or something. I feel like that you're getting messages from, nefarious powers or aliens or something. I don't really like that. I prefer to have either a stack of papers or some note cards because it makes me feel more present for the conversation. It's the same reason that I don't like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I rarely check my phone. And people get very angry because I don't text them back right away, if ever, and I don't email back right away, and sometimes I forget to respond. But it's because if I'm talking to somebody and they take out their phone and start looking at their phone, I'm extraordinarily offended and disrespected. I hate that. And so I don't want to do that to somebody else either. And I extend that broadly when I'm speaking to a group of students or people or even speaking into the camera and talking to all of you. I don't like to have that thing there. It makes me feel distracted and like I'm not present.
Interesting. Norm says, Michael, do you place any blame for millennial socialism on conservatives who have called any social policy left of Ron Paul, quote unquote, socialism?
No, I think that we're not being honest enough about the breadth of socialism. So we'll get to the Ron Paul of it in a second, but there are different kinds of socialism. There are three kinds you can name right now, which is National Socialism, that's the Nazis, International Socialism, that's the Communists, and Democratic Socialism, that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And they speak a little bit to the aims of them and to how they come to power, but broadly they are socialism. They are government control of the means of production to some extent or to an entire extent. And it's really wicked. It's a basic impulse of mankind to give away power. Mankind does not always long to be free in all places at all times. Men want to be slaves. This is clear again and again throughout the Bible, throughout every great myth and every great work of history. They want to be slaves. And what we have to do is fight against that. Socialism is not some minor, exotic thing that might pop up. It is a basic temptation of the human heart. And we have to fight against that because we were not made to be slaves. As for the social policy, I don't see people referring to lefty social views as socialist, though I do see conservatives making fun of them. This whole, we got to legalize, we should redefine marriage, we should have a lot of abortion or whatever. By the way, Ron Paul, very pro-life guy. But they are part and parcel. The classic thing you hear among new conservatives, like recent ex-Democrats or kids in college, where they'll say, well, I'm a fiscal conservative and a social liberal, which means I don't really think about anything in society, but I really like having my own money. Yeah. And I did this myself when I was in college.
And usually pot.
And then,
it's like money, prostitution, and pot.
That's right. They want all the drugs they want legal. Yeah, and they do. And I get it because in a very shallow sense, it makes sense. More freedom, more freedom. Yeah. But all shallows are clear, so you have to think in a deeper sense. And first of all, drugs inhibit your freedom and they enslave you. But so do these vices. In order to have freedom, you have to discipline yourself. Order will be maintained in society. Society must have order. Either you can order yourself and discipline yourself, or Big Daddy government will come in and order you for yourself. But order will be maintained. So you need to try at least to practice the virtues. And that means not doing every drug under the sun, perhaps. That means not, trying to upend and have a revolution every 5 seconds. That means that there's a coherence to a conservative disposition and view of the world. And social liberal, fiscal conservative is a good step along the way. I'm glad to have you there, but if you're honest with yourself and you think through your thoughts, you're not going to finish there.
All right, Tom wants to know, hey Michael and Alicia, any Rand Paul fans at the Daily Wire?
Yeah, I love Rand Paul. I think he's great. He's obviously a little more libertarian than I am. I'm not a huge libertarian, but libertarians and conservatives make a ton of common cause. If we can have common cause with Kanye West and Cardi B, I think that we can have common cause with Rand Paul. And he's a very principled guy. I like that he had a career outside of politics. He is actually a surgeon, right? He's actually had a job and worked in reality. And he's come around on those judges, which I really like. I don't like it when people are just there to obstruct and make idols of their principles and say, look at me, look how principled I am. But he's working with people and he has his beliefs and he's pro-liberty. I'm with him.
All right, Ryan says, hypothetically, assume you met an alien from outer space and no extraterrestrials definitely exist. If you're a candidate for political office, would you tell people the truth about aliens?
I would, because you can't hide it. This is the question of all the conspiracy theorist types. They're always, the government has all of these secrets about the aliens and about this, and every day there's a new conspiracy theory that comes out. And all the conspiracy theories sort of make some sense internally. You can read almost any of them and think, oh, that's a weird coincidence. Oh, that's sort of...
The craziest one, though, was that video of like the Navy jet flying and then the unidentified object flying, and then it passed the Navy jet.
I know. It passed it, and then Bigfoot jumped out of it. No, it's true. I saw that same video.
And I was like, did China have that technology?
I know.
That's where my mind went.
I don't know. I mean, C.S. Lewis said that aliens could exist. I suppose they could. But what I do know is that the government could not successfully cover it up. That's the main thing. I don't know whether aliens exist or not, but I do know that the government can't cover it up. It's just not capable of that. Things come out, things leak, because the government is made up of men just like you and me, and a lot of them are just career bureaucrats who might be men of lesser caliber than you and me, depending on the agency. There are a lot of good career people in the government too. It's just not possible. And when you lean into some conspiracy theory type things, you're kind of contradicting your own view of the world. Look, bad people do bad things, but they tend to come to light over time. So the reason I would tell the people is because I'm an elected politician. I rely on the people. I rely on the people's goodwill and being honest to the people, and it's going to come out one way or the other, so I'd definitely tell them.
You don't think that you would risk losing your re-election?
I'm not going to risk it for.
World,
I'm not going to risk it for an alien. I mean, David Mayhew, that great political scientist, made a career on proving that congressmen are motivated solely by re-election. They're almost exclusively motivated by re-election. So I don't, E.T. is not going to convince me to ruin my life.
All right. Johnny says, any thoughts on what comes after decadent postmodernism?
Yeah, fire, brimstone maybe, chaos,
sweet
destruction.
Meteor of death?
Yeah, the sweet meteor of death might. What comes after it eventually will have to be some sense of order. And I think we're actually getting a little bit back into this. So when we talk about decadent postmodernism, what we're talking about are these people who deny objective realities. In a basic sense, they deny that there is truth. You hear this all the time on the left. They say there's no such thing as truth. But you heard that from Pontius Pilate. You heard the same sort of thing.
Also, this week we heard it from Rudy Giuliani?
We did not actually. We really didn't. He was quoting Chuck Todd, who said truth is truth, and what Rudy Giuliani said is the thing you're referring to as truth is not truth. And he was exactly right. But you can go watch my episode yesterday to hear that. They
did an entire episode on it.
I did, because they tried to get it. They tried to make him into Pontius Pilate. The way you know that's ridiculous is it's the left that denies objective reality. It's the left represented by outlets that Chuck Todd is on that denies that reality exists. So I think we're seeing that crack back now. In part, this whole pronoun thing has been a big part of it. Because it's so absurd. You look at a giant dude, and a giant dude tells you that he's now a little beautiful woman, and you have to refer to him as she, and you just say, no, that isn't the case. And no disrespect to anybody who has this psychological condition, but you look at objective reality and say, you are experiencing something subjectively that is causing you pain, and I have compassion for you. But objectively, there is truth. It's why people like Jordan Peterson are very big. It's why the Daily Wire is doing so well. And that is flipping back. Look at even people who are within the decadent entertainment culture. A guy like Kanye West is actually coming around and saying, wait a second. Trump's not a Nazi. Wait a second. And even these guys who are in that culture saying, we have to get back to earth just a little bit, because where else is it going to go? At a certain point, you can't go any further. So I actually do have a lot of hope for the culture in the short run. In the long run, we're all dead, to quote Keynes, but in the short run, things are getting better, and I'm hoping that can last for, I don't know, another like 50 years, 60 years. That's our lifetime. That's a win.
I want to live longer than that.
50, what?
Yeah.
Well, a lady doesn't tell her age, but in 50, 60 years, I'll be 80.
Yeah,
I'll be over 88 or something.
Well, if you keep smoking cigars the way you do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't need to live forever,
Arun says, should someone lie about who they voted for if they fear severe retaliation from their university, employer, or other leftists with power over them?
Oof, this is really hard.
Why should any of those people have any right to ask them how they voted?
They don't have any right to do it, but they do it. They do it anyway. And they'll do it kind of jokingly at the water cooler. Yeah, ha ha ha. I wouldn't recommend that you lie. I don't think that you should lie and live another life. There were occasions back in the long ago days when I would work as an actor where I would be on set or in a theater and I would keep my mouth shut, or I would even say things that could be interpreted as a little bit lefty. And you do it just so that you keep working and you get along, but you feel a little icky about it. I don't think that leads to a good life. You might want to keep quiet. Even if you keep quiet, they'll probably find out that you're a conservative or a Trump supporter. But you might want to do that. I can't go out there and tell you that you should be honest, blare your views from the rooftop. I did that. I've done that my whole life. And now, in many ways, it's my job to do that. So I get to do it. But that turned off other opportunities. Other social opportunities, other professional opportunities. Obviously, in Hollywood, it turns off a lot of professional opportunities. And there's a cost to that. I don't regret the cost. I've had a great time. I sleep very well at night. I get to do whatever I want. It's a blast, and I feel good, and I feel that I get to maintain the integrity of my convictions. But if you work for the widget company and your political views don't align with the president of the widget company, and it's going to create a bad situation for you, you might want to keep quiet. You might be doing greater good by keeping that job and not hampering your career. I wouldn't lie, but you might have to play it safe. That's not a clear-cut, easy answer, but, life isn't clear-cut or easy. Shallows are clear.
All right. Ginger says that her husband becomes very angry when watching most of the mainstream media.
Who doesn't?
I love watching the news in the morning, but not with him. Do you have any suggestions for me to help calm him?
Yes. Just show him the ratings. Show him the ratings on CNN, show him the ratings on MSNBC. I mean, they get beaten out. I saw the other day, Ancient Aliens beat out, I forget if it was CNN or MSNBC, Ancient Aliens on the History Channel beat out mainstream primetime left-wing cable news. That is glorious. Ancient, the guy who was like, it's an alien, but aliens, that guy beat them out. Nobody is watching it. And by the way, when it comes to CNN, it was CNN. Ancient Aliens beat out CNN because CNN, all their ratings are propped up by being on in every airport in the world. If the airports turned off CNN, would anybody be watching? It'd be like Andy Cuomo would be watching Chris Cuomo on CNN. That's all that would be left watching. So show them those ratings. And I really laugh at it. You can approach politics in one of two ways. One is to get really worked up about it because these guys are so stupid a lot of the time, they're saying things that are wrong and in some case vicious and evil and wicked, and you can get really worked up about that, or you can laugh at them. Two options, equally valid. I don't know that one is more valid than the other, but one will give you a better life. Be serious when you have to seriously confront things, but keep a sense of humor. What is it? Chesterton said that the madman is not the man who's lost his reason. He's the man who's lost everything but his reason. You need a sense of humor and a sense of proportion in these things. And if some dum-dum on CNN is spouting off on some nonsense, I think you can laugh at it. You laugh at them, and it really deflates them. When you mock these people, when you don't take them seriously, it really deflates these guys. And look, President Trump won an election laughing at the left, and we were all laughing at them too.
All right, we have more questions, but we're wrapping up. So if you're not a subscriber and you want to ask questions, then you need to become a subscriber right now at dailywire.com, and then you can click on the little description box and come over to the conversation page and type in your questions in the nice little box. Ginger says, Michael, do you have any suggestions on how to fix the homeless crisis in California?
Bulldozer would be a good start. You could use a bulldozer, maybe. What's the one that just rolls? Or you could do that. I am not totally kidding. It is outrageous what's happened in California.
So what do you do with you're not going to run over the homeless people?
No, I'll use the bulldozer for them, and I'll use the steamroller for their tents. It's an outrage what they do. Nobody has the right to live on a street. It is, to quote Rudy Giuliani when they were doing this.
Doesn't it seem kind of anti-Catholic, though?
How's it anti-Catholic?
Because isn't the church supposed to have open doors and help all of those people?
Yeah, they can go to one of the many, many, many Catholic charities and homeless shelters that exist in the country and get help and get counseling. They're welcome to do that.
Yeah.
That's not on the street. That's in the church and that's in the shelters. To quote Rudy Giuliani during the Occupy Wall Street protests, Living on the street is a dysfunctional act that harms the individual and society. You can't walk through downtown LA without fear of being stabbed by a person who probably has several mental illnesses and is almost certainly addicted to a lot of drugs. That person has no right to live in that public space. And the current mayor, Eric Garcetti, is truly horrific and a real crone, corrupt politician, and he's doing nothing. The problem has gotten so much worse under his watch. People need a little tough love. People get this wrong all the time. I'll go back to Chesterton, who shows that heresy is not the promotion of vice over virtue. It's the promotion of one virtue to the exclusion of the others. So we want to show some mercy to the homeless people. Good, buy him a meal. Buy him a meal, take him, talk to him. Nobody talks to homeless people. You ever notice this? Even the rare person who buys the person a meal, they kind of hand it off. They say, okay, here you go. They don't talk to them. Maybe sit down and talk to the person. Learn something about them. Learn who they are. Just talk. People need to speak. And maybe offer them help if you can offer them help. Get them to a shelter. Get them to a facility. A lot of times people don't want to go to shelters because you can't do drugs in shelters. And you're not free to live on your own in squalor and self-appointed slavery in those shelters. So we might promote that mercy, but it seems like a false mercy. And it seems to be mercy at the expense of justice or prudence. There are other virtues here too. And courage, perhaps. It takes
public safety.
But yeah, public safety. I mean, love takes a lot of forms, and one of those is tough love. We don't have a lot of tough love today. We have a lot of sentimental love, but you need a little tough love. It doesn't help anybody to let these guys live on the street. It creates horrible conditions. It breeds crime. I've seen it in my own neighborhoods. It's bred rape and crime and assault. It's really awful, and anybody who suggests that we should let it persist is morally culpable.
All right. Rosemary says, now that God is a woman and has cultural reparations been are we retroactivated to the dawn of time?
Have cultural reparations been retroactivated to the dawn of time? Yeah, I guess so. That's right. What Rosemary is referring to is the greatest music video ever created.
It's so weird.
It's Ariana Grande, God is a Woman. And the thing that's so great about it is it proves Pat Robertson right when he said that feminism teaches women to practice witchcraft and kill their children and become lesbians.
Literally, Michael made me read this blog post from
92
a gay Wiccan.
Oh yes,
right?
yeah.
That talked about all of the satanic kind of things.
Shot for shot.
In this music video.
It really is pretty weird. And she did the performance last night at the VMAs, and she did the Last Supper, but Christ is a black woman, just like Adam is a black woman in her video. That is really what it is, because it's kind of sad for the cultural left. There is all of this cultic imagery. And why do they have cultic imagery? Is it because they've all en masse decided to become witches? No, it's because they're reacting against a Western civilization that they hate. So it's all just like, what if it were opposite day? That's basically what the left's answer to everything is like, but what if it were opposite day? If Adam is a white man, then we should do black woman. Haha, it's the opposite. If the Last Supper is serious and somber and respectful, and it's all men, then we should flip it, and it'll be all women having lewd sexual poses. And all, it's just, they just want the opposite. And it's a really ridiculous version of reparations, because our civilization has done very well for everybody, done very well for racial minorities, ethnic minorities, very well for women, better than any civilization in history or even imaginable. And so if we go back to the early start of that culture and change everything around.
I don't remember Rome ending well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know that it's going to bode well for these people who think that they're going to create utopia on Earth. I don't think they're going to quite get there.
All right. Nathan wants to know, Michael, do you think it is always blasphemous to joke or laugh at God's expense? Do I need to go to confession every time I quote Monty Python, or does God have a sense of humor to an extent?
Well, I wouldn't make a joke at God's expense. You can joke about the divine. People joke about the divine all the time. God is the source of humor, so I suppose he has a sense of humor because he has a sense of everything because he's omniscient. But I wouldn't. There's a real line. You've got to really be careful here. And there's always this question. We debate this around the office all the time. Why doesn't Jesus have a sense of humor? And I think Jesus does have a sense of humor. He has these all those "O ye of little faith," I think, are kind of funny, you know.
Or even like when he was a boy and was teaching in the synagogue.
Yeah, well, that's certainly.
And they were kind of challenging him, his answers.
Yeah, his answers there, and there's he always says, "How much longer must I suffer to be with you?" He's saying that's a serious statement, but there is a humor to that. But the thing is, when you're telling a joke, so much of humor comes from incongruity and absurdity. Absurdity means out of tune, to be out of tune. But Christ is the logos of the universe. We always hear the voice of God. All the great prophets, and we hear the voice of God. That's the sense we hear it in. And God is not out of tune. God is in tune. And so humor, I don't know that humor really means very much, because there isn't incongruity and there isn't absurdity in God himself, which is why you've got to be very careful, or Monty Python is going to send you to hell.
Evan wants to know, Michael, why is it that women are praised for their chastity in society, but men are made to feel shame in their chastity?
It depends what part of society. I think I don't think there's really a double standard exactly in the parts of society that demand chastity. The parts of society that demand chastity, and by that I mean the church and Judaism, they want men to be chaste too. I mean, they used to make fun of Ben on TV. They'd call him Ben the Virgin because he wanted to remain chaste until he was married. So that part I think is pretty coherent. And then the lefty, crazy parts of society, they shame the virgins, right? They say, go to the slut walk, shout your abortion, go out, be very proud of your promiscuity if you're a man or a woman. There is a kind of old school culture that I think is not exactly religious and is not exactly ideological, but it just kind of goes down to men, which is that men are more promiscuous than women. In part, this is because we're more liable to be promiscuous. That's because we don't get pregnant. Right, the risks are much lower. If you're going to be a dirtbag, then you can really do it almost without any problems at all. And because men are the aggressors, they're more aggressive, they're more sexually desire. They have greater sexual desire. Women are more sexually desirous, but they have greater sexual drives, and that's a fact that modern feminism wants to pretend doesn't exist. But in the modern culture, you'll sometimes hear women, they'll say, yeah, I went out and got a man last night, I got laid. And you just think, who are you kidding? I mean, you're taking a male boast and you're trying to appropriate that, cultural appropriation, to make it pretend that gender and biological sex doesn't matter. But of course it does matter. And but I think that's just part of the human condition, is that men are going to be a little more driven when it comes to sex than women, and that explains why we pat some men on the back and we say, hey, good on you, buddy. Oh, I wish it were me. Hey, hey. And with women, they're more protective of that against all the men who want to do it. Any woman can go out and get a man to go home with her. That's not true for any man. And that's your lot in life, fellas. Sorry.
Kate says, hi, Michael. How has marriage changed your relationship with the missus?
It's interesting. I mean, I've known my wife since I was in the womb, basically. We're not siblings. I've just known her a very long time, since middle school. We dated in high school and all that. So as a practical matter, we've had this relationship forever. And yet marriage does change things. It really does. Like the instant it happens, it changes things. And I don't know if it changes the relationship with the person. Like it doesn't change how I really see the person or view the person per se. It creates this separate thing. It creates this marriage that I am now in possession of, that I have to tend to, and that is being tended to for me. And it lets you see your life very differently. It lets you see your life. Now you think, oh, well, next step, especially as a good Catholic boy, you think about the next step.
Baby.
Yeah, right. You think about buying a house. You think about making more money. You think about this. You think about all of these things that go along with marriage, and it's wonderful. I really highly recommend it, because by traditional standards, I got married very late. I got married at 28. By modern standards, I'm a child bride. I'm so young. So many of my friends get married in their 30s or 40s, but I really recommend it. It's great. I don't miss a thing about being single, and really like being married. And I did marry a saint, so that does help.
Yeah, well, she gained her sainthood when she said, I do to you.
I know, that's true. Yeah, talk about sanctifying works. Yeah, right.
For real. This is our last question. I can't believe it.
Sad.
It's been an entire hour. Last question comes from Joel. What are your thoughts on Austin Peterson's loss in the Missouri primary? Did Trump make a mistake in nominating his Rhino letter boy, Josh Hawley?
Josh Hawley. Yeah,
that was a crazy, watching that election was fascinating to me. And I think that actually, he's going to be there with our Daily Wire crew at
Austin
Politicon. Like Austin Peterson's at Politicon.
I've had Austin on my show.
Ben's there, you're there, I'm there, Drew's there. Like everybody's there.
I really like Austin. I've had him on the show before. I like his point of view. He's obviously a libertarian, more libertarian than I am, but I really appreciate his point of view. I think that without comment, look, the race is over. Sad. I like Austin very much. I have nothing against Josh Hawley, but the real question is, where should Trump fall, right? Should Trump be endorsing the more stable party guys, or should he go for these more outside candidates? Austin Peterson is a libertarian guy. I believe he was registered as a libertarian at points in his life. So should he go really out there on the political spectrum, or should he play along with the party? I don't think it's a mistake to play along with the party in so much as Trump runs the party now. He's shaped the party largely in his image in just a short period of time. He's shown himself to be a conservative, far more conservative than I think any of us really expected him to be. And you got to play with the party. You worry about institutional men, but the White House is an institution, the presidency is an institution, the Congress is an institution. You've got to deal with that because your party is your team, especially when you're the team captain like President Trump is. So I don't know that he made the wrong decision in so much as you play along with your people. And he's got a lot of players around him. Mitch McConnell is around him. He's delivered very well. Even Ryan delivered for him. And so you've got to give a tug and pull. And you won't always get your preferred candidate. I know a lot of people love Austin, really wish that he could have gotten it. You're not always going to get that perfect candidate. Ronald Reagan didn't always get those things right, because it's a little easy for us when we have a microphone to sit here and say exactly how the world should look. But when you're in there, when you're in the fight, when you're in the trenches, then you've got to make some compromises, and you've got to make some bets on people like Hawley. And so I hope the bet pays off. But I always give respect for the people who are in there fighting in the party, in the trenches, because they're the ones who affect the legislation.
We're done.
We're out of here.
That's it for Michael's episode of The Conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And be sure to subscribe to dailywire.com now so you can be a part of next month's episode of The Conversation. It's going to be on Thursday, September 20th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, featuring our very own Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief,
the big boss,
New York Times bestselling author, host of the fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation, The Ben Shapiro Show.
I heard that somewhere. Yeah, I don't.
There are a few other things too.
Yeah, that's right. What's his wife do?
I think I don't know. Maybe a doctor?
I don't know.
I'd heard that somewhere. But anyway, this has been Michael Knowles' episode of The Conversation. I'm Alicia Krause, and we'll see you next time.